This is Danny Frank for GNAT TV. I'm at the Williamstown Theatre Festival talking with Eric Bogosian. Eric is probably best known for his cast regular role on the acclaimed television series Law and Order, and of course Criminal Intent. And he's also known for coming close to winning a Pulitzer Prize for writing a play, Talk Radio, that you also starred in the play and the movie.
Yes.
And he's also written a book, written several books, but the most recent, latest book is Operation Nemesis. It's published by Little Brown, the book has received some attention. New York Times did a very nice review on it. And we're going to get into all of this, but first, Eric, welcome, and I'd like you to tell our viewers about your starring role and legacy at the Williamstown Theatre Festival this summer.
Sure. Thanks, Daniel. Yes, this is a new play by Daniel Goldfarb, which I've been lucky enough to be cast into it as Neil Abrams, a Columbia professor who's also a noted author. That's the character. And as the play opens, he's annoyed that he's gotten a bad review. And even though he's in his 60s, he's become inspired to think that suddenly he wants to have a kid for the first time. He wants to have a baby by his wife, played by Jessica Hecht, who is in her 40s in the play. So this requires some running around with fertility clinics and so forth, and then the plot gets more and more complex as my student, played by Hallie Pfeiffer, comes into the game, and the wonderful Justin Long plays the fertility doctor in the play. And it's a play where there's layers and layers of comedy and drama and a more and more complex look at what it means to have a child, especially this way, through the IVF or surrogate system. But I did it because... And
also late in life, too.
Oh, yeah, late in life, what somebody might call old guy, dad. I've been here to Williamstown twice before, with my own work and on stage with my own work, and then with other people's work, a play called Diva 15 years ago. And this is a great place to just come and work out and stretch your legs as an actor, so to speak. And I can't think of any company I would rather want to be doing it than this company of actors. It's an amazing group to get together. In fact, I think part of the reason that we could have such a great group together is because it is such a short run. People are available, they're not doing, I mean, Jessica's case, she's always doing Broadway. Hallie's always busy with something. Justin's doing movie after movie. And so it was, I love the idea of working with these guys, and it's been just as enjoyable as I thought it would be. And it's a great play. It's a great play to kind of chew on. New plays are always, they're new. Nobody else has done it. So you get to do things like nobody else. It's like going through Uncharted. You're the Lewis and Clark of acting in terms of this territory. So it's been really great. The only sad thing is it's very brief. I mean, we only have another week to go and then we're done. At least we're done for now.
So you prefer the new and the innovation rather than the vintage and the past, or maybe recreating a role from an older show or a show that's been done, a revival?
I have a handful of plays that I would love to take a crack at. I think number one is Dracula, which I saw Frank Langella do on Broadway 1,000 years ago. And
back in the 70s, I think it was, right? Or 80s?
Really, yeah, it was like 77 or something.
Yeah.
And sure, but new stuff, I guess for me, it's not only about the material itself, but who you're doing it with, the director. I was on Broadway a couple of years ago in a new Donald Margulies play, and that was directed by Dan Sullivan, and I was on stage with Laura Linney and Brian Darcy James and Alicia Silverstone, and then later Christina Ricci, and it was just another great company. We are at an interesting point in the history of theater in America today where we really have incredibly strong companies and actors out there right now. A number of them are here for the Williamstown Festival, and we're like rich beyond belief, because the acting company that has come sort of to maturity right now is just amazingly strong. And anybody who's writing a play gets an opportunity usually to have just terrific actors. You have to choose between what wonderful actors you get to work with. I oddly, as an actor, I mean, I've acted since I was 16, but for some reason, I don't think of myself as an actor. I don't know why that is, but I do so much writing that I guess I see acting as the thing that I love doing so much that it's not a job. And my day job is writing. But
Williamstown is truly the thespian laboratory, right? Huh?
Yeah. I mean, well, we get to do things here that we don't get to do in the city. First of all, we get to spend a lot of time with each other. We get to see each other's work. And don't forget, there's a new generation of theater artists who are here in the form of the interns and the other young people who are working on these shows, who work very, very hard to put them up. And they're learning from us, hopefully. Hopefully we're bringing not only our skills, but our discipline and our methods, and they can say, oh, this is how you do it, or this is what it means to be a professional actor. I want to be a professional actor.
And in terms of your past experience here, do you feel that the audiences here are of a much different mindset, more tolerant or willing to buy into the experimentation and innovation versus, say, Broadway or off-Broadway even?
It changes. It depends. I mean, I don't put the Broadway audience on any pedestal or anything. I think, first of all, audiences are a collection of people, and you're going to have all different kinds of people in any given audience. When I did my play here, Red Angel, 10 years ago, the material was pretty risque, and I did feel that there was more of a reaction to how risque it was than maybe would have happened in New York. But no, I mean, what's happened to American culture is that everybody's watching the same TV shows, everybody's driving the same cars. Maybe you're in Williamstown and there's more greenery here than in the city, but pretty much we follow the same culture. So when you're putting things on stage, the only thing is, though, is that for some reason, people feel stuff much more strongly when it's on stage. So for example, we have a very dramatic moment in this play, very intense. And I think the audience feels it way more strongly than if they had seen it in a movie or in a TV documentary. I absolutely guarantee that. And you can feel it out when people talk about the play afterwards. There's one part, it's 45 seconds that is so intense that people don't even know what to do with it. So there's that aspect of theater where people feel things very strongly when they come to see theater. But like I say, everybody watches the same. Everybody's watching House of Cards, and everybody's watching Seinfeld, and everybody's
Law and Order,
Criminal
Intent.
Yes, right.
So Eric Bogosian, Operation Nemesis, is about the assassination plot that avenged the Armenian Genocide, and I know that the book so far has received some pretty good reviews since it's been out, I think, a couple of months now, right?
Yeah.
So
it's done very well. This has been a real kind of detour for me that lasted a long time. I worked on this book for 7 years. About 7 years ago, I was going to write a movie about one of the people in this story. I had heard that there was this young man who had assassinated a Turkish leader in Berlin a few years after the Armenian Genocide in 1921. The young man's name was Soghomon Tetlerian, and I was going to write a movie about him. The minute I started doing any research into it, I discovered this little-known story that Tetlerian wasn't what he pretended to be, and which was simply a student who had happened to kill this guy, but rather he was part of a conspiracy based in Massachusetts. This might be of interest to your viewers, actually in Boston and Watertown, and in Albany. And it was a group of Armenians who sent commando assassins into Europe, and they succeeded in killing 6 major Turkish leaders in 1921 and 1922. I'd never heard the story. I knew many historians who'd never heard this story. So I spent 7 years researching this story, but also doing a kind of a roundup on the Armenian-Turkish issues, because I didn't fully understand them, and I thought that my reader would need to understand this in order to even understand what this assassination was all about. And it ended up being this book. I mean, this is an incredible story, because basically there was a genocide, and then 5 years later, some people took it upon themselves to avenge it and succeeded in killing 6 major leaders who had made this genocide happen. So, I mean, when has that even ever happened in history before? So and we have gotten great, I have gotten great reviews for this book, and it's done very well. There's some talk of a movie based on, I mean, it's assassins and so forth. But the main thing was that, I mean, this is not what I do. I'm not a scholar, I'm not a historian, but I got to sort of really dig in deep for a number of years, worked with translators, worked with historians to put this together. And to be honest, at 50, whatever, I'm 62 now, to do this was just a fantastic sort of alternate life thing that I did. Well, now I'm going back to my day job, which is acting.
Well, I mean, was it a passion to make this type of commitment and investment, or were there periods over this 7 years where you said, you know, holy smokes, what am I getting into here? That at some point to pull a plug, maybe, that you were discouraged, you know, at some point, maybe?
I absolutely hit roadblocks. I didn't know how to proceed at certain points. I would put it aside for a month or so, and then I would go back to it. But pretty much the whole thing, I never knew it was going to take as long as it took, but it took as long as it took. And B, it was an idea. Like, you might have the idea, like, I want to go climb K2, and then halfway up you go, what was I thinking? But you're already halfway up, so what are you going to do about it? You have to keep going. So that was what happened with it. But it was always exciting and interesting to me, because I'm not a scholar, I'm not a historian, and I got to work with these. I work with a whole other world. Like, I'm a theater guy, a movie guy, and here I am with this whole other world of people at the University of Michigan, here in Boston, in New York, at the public library there, and it's a world I knew nothing about how they. I really knew nothing about it. I mean, this book has 250 endnotes in it. I meticulously put the endnotes together. When I gave them to my copy editor, they said, these are great endnotes. Where are the page numbers? And I was like, you need page numbers too? And any scholar would know that. I did not have to go back and do that work. So maybe the book should have taken 6 years instead of 7.
So in the interest of reading, is there any fictionalization of it, or is it all historical document?
There's nothing fictional. I had 2 tasks to set to myself. Everything had to be accurate. And I went through a lot of trouble to make sure everything was accurate. I worked with people in Berlin. I worked with people in California, all over to check this. And I also wanted to be readable.
You didn't want a textbook, though.
Yeah,
you wanted a story.
Yes.
You wanted a story that would hold the reader's attention, right?
It had to be, in my mind, it had to be like a long magazine article or a long Vanity Fair article, like on a topic that, honestly, I mean, Armenians are interested in this, but what about a layperson? What would they? But, you know, there are books like that, books on all sorts of subjects, and you pick it up and you go, wow, I never knew this about codfish or whatever it is, and then you find it so interesting that you keep going. And that, I think I got it done. I think I got the job done. I had wonderful support from people, and I had amazing editors, and we got it done. I'm very happy about this book, I have to tell you.
Eric Bogosian, The Holocaust, which was genocide, of course, launched by Adolf Hitler from a period of roughly 1938 or 36 to 48, has had abundant coverage to this day through written books and plays and movies and media accounts. And yet the Armenian Genocide, which, you know, proportionately was, I mean, when you consider the amount of people that were victims here, and the so much less in population in the world at that time. It's been eclipsed in a sense by the Holocaust. It doesn't get the same level of status or recognition as the Holocaust does, you know.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, the Turkish government has actively suppressed this story. The Turkish government is a major ally of the United States. You just have to get out a map and note that they are border with Russia, they border with Iraq, Iran. They loom over the oil fields of Saudi Arabia. So the United States doesn't want to step on their toes. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. I think it's somewhat absurd, but they have over the years stepped in and forced. There was a movie that was going to be made in the 1940s, and they just stopped the movie from.
Really?
They went through the State Department.
The U.S. government.
U.S. government
Really?
Through the State Department. They forced. It was a movie based on the 40 Days of Mossadegh, the Franz Werfel novel. And they stopped the movie from being made. And they have continuously, I mean, they've now got our president who, prior to being president, used the word genocide, will no longer utter the word genocide. Samantha Power, who is our person at the UN, yeah, wrote a book about this, the story of these guys and the Armenian genocide. She's also not allowed to ever mention the genocide, and this is because of its policy. But I would never compare one of these tragedies with another one. I mean, what happened in Germany and Poland and Eastern Europe during World War II and just before is just, the magnitude is mind-boggling, as is this story also. One thing that should be kept in mind, though, is that Germany was an ally of Turkey in World War I, did participate in this genocide, and there's even indication that many of the young soldiers, German soldiers stationed in Turkey during this period, were later SS officers during World War II. So there's a direct connection between Germany and Turkey, between the Armenian Genocide and the Jewish Holocaust of World War II. So, I mean, these are crazy people who did horrible things through their government. Germany has apologized. Armenians simply ask that Turkey recognize this great crime, and so we can move on.
So this was basically from about 1915 to 1920, the period of this.
The actual Armenian genocide, what we call the genocide, we tend to date between 1915 and 1919. Some historians start a little earlier, some will take it a little bit later. There were a number of other similar kinds of what you might call pogroms in other parts of Eastern Europe around the same time. But in 1915, the decision was made to empty the villages, to massacre villages, to deport people to places where they couldn't possibly survive, into the middle of deserts where they were sure to die. And as a result, a population of 2 million people, or 3 million Armenian Christians in the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, were reduced to tens of thousands by the end of World War I. And the way they were murdered is truly beyond horrific. I lost, it's odd to say this, but 2 of my great-grandfathers died in this horrible moment in history. You know, one of the things, I was just reading, I do research, I continue to do research on these topics, and I'm reading a book about the Holocaust right now. And when you look at these pictures, the thing that strikes you is the anonymity of the people in the camps. It's a horror that we didn't even know who they were.
Yes.
They didn't know who they were by the end. And that's what happened to the Armenians too. People who had lives were grouped together and taken away and died in anonymity in the middle of the deserts. Sadly, this is happening today. ISIS is doing similar things in a similar region. And these poor villagers, they're people who've lived in these places for hundreds, if not thousands of years, just going about their business, practicing their religion, and then
but through
next day they're dead.
Through communication, talking about ISIS today, and media, we know about things instantaneously, right away. When you think back to 1915 and 1920, there was almost no communication, no electronic media of any sort.
No, there wasn't electronic.
So a lot of this this whole horror, this cause, you know, was never. It couldn't be communicated, and it couldn't really be described. Well, people were so unaware of it.
The New York Times covered it. One of the interesting things about, in fact, the first big international relief program that ever was for the Armenians right after World War I. It was called Near East Relief, and tens of millions of dollars were raised for these poor orphans. And that was the first time that anybody had ever done anything like that in the world. In fact, a lot of this began here at Williams in the 1800s, when the whole Protestant movement of missionaries began, because these were the people behind these programs. So the Americans knew about it. And then around 1923, oil became the most important thing that anybody could think about. And this whole idea of talking about the Armenians, talking about what had happened there, began to get suppressed, because Turkey was a very important player in this world of oil and protecting the oil fields and all of that. I mean, this is history. Today we're in a new place, and Turkey wants to be a real country in the real world, and they are. But in order to really step up to be what they claim to be, a modern country, a modern democracy, they have to, you know, acknowledge this sort of thing, just as we have in what's happened in our history and what Germany has done. Every country has skeletons in its closets, but to actively deny is as if you continue with the genocide, which is really unacceptable.
Do you think, Eric Bogosian, in our schools and educational system, that Armenian genocide is hardly covered the way it should be, to the degree that the Holocaust is taught? It doesn't get, again, the same level of recognition for this horrible event in history. Again,
there is active suppression by the Turkish government and Turkish affiliates of the Turkish government in this area. It happened in Massachusetts. There was a court case where there was a textbook that said that there was the Armenian genocide. Turks went to court and said, well, if you're going to say there's an Armenian genocide, you have to say the other side. I don't know what the other side could possibly be, but they went to court. They lost in court. But there is always a lobbying, a huge lobbying effort in this country to suppress this information. I don't know. I mean, Armenia and Turkey, the history is not as recent as what happened in World War II, and maybe it isn't as of great interest to people, but of course people should know about it. I mean, just as they should know about all the signal, whether it's what Stalin did to the Ukrainians or what Mao did to his own people. These are important aspects of history so that we don't repeat them. And yeah, I do think Armenian, certainly wherever there are Armenians, and there are a lot of them in Massachusetts, in Worcester and Watertown and so forth, should know about what happened, and it shouldn't be suppressed, that's for sure.
So what I'm hearing is that through this book as the platform, there could be a number of movies and plays with the characters, the players in this history, good or bad. There could be a number of plays and movies coming out of this horrible event,
well,
right? that deserve to be brought forward, like, again, the Holocaust.
To talk about a movie, I'll believe it when I see it, but we're actively negotiating that right now, so we'll see what happens with that. And I always have the ability to work in a theater piece, and probably will address this at some point. But I have to go do a show tonight, so now I have to think about that.
Oh, and it's fair to say, in terms of the Armenian population, throughout history, beyond the period of the genocide, there's always been tension in that area, in that region geographically there, right? I mean,
well, I mean, the history
between
of
the Russians or the Turks or
oh,
the
sure,
Germans,
between the Russian Empire
yeah,
and the Turkish Empire, for sure. But one of the things that fascinates me is that Muslims and Christians and Jews can live harmoniously together in some circumstances, and then they can have circumstances where the leadership encourages them to fight with each other. Look, New York City is whatever it is, 100 miles south of here. Jews, Muslims, Armenian, everybody lives to Christians. They all live together in peace. Nobody shoots anybody or hurts anybody. That can happen anywhere, and there's no reason for us to feel that when you believe in a religion, that means you have to kill the other guy who doesn't believe in your religion. That's crazy.
Eric Bogosian, in our remaining minute, after Williamstown Theatre Festival and Legacy, what's coming up?
The next thing that's coming up is that I continue work on my website, which is called 100monologues.com, in which all my favorite actors each do one of my monologues for my book, 100 Monologues. In fact, Jessica does one, and Hallie has done one. They've both done one already. You just go online. It's free, 100monologues.com. It's right there. We have 50 of them posted, over 4 hours of material. Sam Rockwell is there, and all kinds of wonderful actors are there. And then, I don't know why he came to mind off the top of my head, but at any rate, and then we'll go back to shooting again in the fall.
So don't forget to see Legacy with Eric Bogosian and Justin Long and Jessica Hecht and
Hallie Pfeiffer.
Hallie Pfeiffer at the Williamstown Theatre Festival. And his book, Operation Nemesis, it's a fascinating book. It's published by Little Brown. It's gotten very good reviews. I would highly recommend it. Thank you for being our guest, Eric Bogosian.
Thanks for having me,
This is Danny Frank for GNAT TV.